The ancient sage poet Bhartrihari began his adult life in what looked like domestic perfection. He lived as a wealthy householder, but his true anchor in the world was his wife. He loved her with an intensity few could match, placing his absolute trust in her fidelity. One afternoon, a wandering yogi arrived at Bhartrihari's home. The visitor offered no long sermons. He simply placed a single mango in Bhartrihari's hands and explained that whoever ate the fruit would be freed from old age and sickness, living forever. Then the yogi left. Bhartrihari held the fruit and considered his options. He realized that living forever meant eventually watching his beloved wife grow frail and pass away. Unable to fathom a world without her, he gave the mango to her immediately, explaining its miraculous power. To understand how this act of love backfired, we look at his household's relationship map. On the surface, loyalty flows predictably toward Bhartrihari. But there is a hidden link. His wife was secretly in love with the stable keeper. When the wife received the mango, her thoughts did not turn to her husband. She realized that immortality meant little if she had to outlive her secret lover. So she summoned the stable keeper and gave the mango to him. But the stable keeper had a similar revelation. He couldn't bear surviving his own wife, a sweeper in Bhartrihari's house. He gave the mango to her, and she carried it with her as she finished her work. The mango completes the circuit. By surrendering the most precious object in the world out of selfless love, he unknowingly armed a tracking device, one that mapped the exact geometry of betrayal inside his home. Later that evening, Bhartrihari was returning home when he crossed paths with the sweeper woman. He stopped in his tracks. In her hands, she was carrying a very distinct, familiar mango. He immediately stopped her and demanded to know where she got it. Ignorant of the complex web she was caught in, the sweeper gave a simple answer. Her husband gave it to her. Bhartrihari rushed home and summoned the stable keeper. The servant tried to offer excuses, but under intense interrogation, he confessed everything. The revelation struck Bhartrihari with physical force. His wife, the person he worshipped as the crown of faithful wives, had traded his gift of immortality for the affection of a servant. The life he had built on her fidelity vanished instantly. The mango's path exposed the transactional nature of his household. It proved that his ideals of love and loyalty were illusions, held together only by his own ignorance. Meanwhile, the terrified stable keeper sent a warning to the wife. Bhartrihari knew the truth. Panic set in. She calculated that she must avoid public shame and punishment at any cost. She decided there was only one way to silence the threat. She went to the kitchen and prepared a local delicacy, a sweetmeat called an attada, carefully lacing it with lethal poison. She brought the poisoned sweet to her husband, wearing a gentle smile. She softly suggested he eat it now, to hold him over until the main meal was ready. But grief had sharpened Bhartrihari's instincts. Staring at the sweetmeat, he read the intent behind her smile. He understood immediately that she had poisoned the gift. Instead of rage or revenge, a strange calm washed over him. He accepted the sweet, announced he would eat it shortly, and tucked it away into a nook in the eaves of the roof. He then picked up a simple clay begging bowl, turned his back on his home, and walked away from his former life forever. As the legend goes, the moment he stepped across the threshold, the house burst into flames, reducing everything he had owned to ash. Heartbreak had been the catalyst, but it was the active threat of murder from his beloved that forced him to sever his final ties to the dynastic world. Bhartrihari wandered as a nameless ascetic until he settled at the massive western gates of a sacred temple. Here, among the stone columns and reflective pools, he sought a life of total detachment. He adopted a strict rule for his survival. He refused to actively beg for food, choosing instead to simply place his clay bowl in front of him. If someone dropped food into it, he ate. If not, he fasted without complaint. At the eastern gates of this same temple lived another renowned ascetic, Patanathu Pillai. One day, a hungry beggar asked Pillai for alms. Pillai pointed toward the western gate, telling the beggar that a wealthy man sat there who might have something to give. The beggar crossed the temple grounds and asked Bhartrihari for charity. Bhartrihari looked at his rags and empty bowl, insisting he was just as destitute as the man asking for help. The beggar was confused. He repeated Pillai's claim that the man at the western gate was actually a man of wealth. Hearing those words, Bhartrihari saw the bowl through Pillai's eyes. This simple object was an anchor of expectation. It signaled to the world that he was still waiting for someone to give, turning a humble tool into a final, hidden hoard of wealth. Without hesitation, Bhartrihari stood up, lifted the clay bowl, and hurled it against the ground, shattering it to pieces. By destroying his last physical possession and the expectation it represented, Bhartrihari cleared his mind to write his greatest work. He composed hundreds of verses on love, wisdom, and renunciation, leaving behind a legacy born from total detachment.